Before his death, Burt Reynolds revealed the shocking truth about Johnny Carson, leaving Hollywood stunned. For years, whispers floated around about Carson's quirky rules and unique habits, but what Reynolds shared went far beyond those rumors. What are the unforgettable and often amusing moments between Burt Reynolds and Johnny Carson, leading up to the revelation of this untold truth just before Reynolds' death? Burt Reynolds was already making a name for himself in Hollywood during the early 1970s. With his rugged charm and undeniable talent, he quickly became a beloved star. But it wasn't just his acting that captured people's attention. Reynolds had a natural flair for humor and storytelling. This is what first brought him to the attention of The Tonight Show team. Johnny Carson, known as the King of late-night TV, was a powerful figure in Hollywood. His show wasn't just a place to promote your latest film, it was a platform that could elevate your career. For many stars, appearing on Carson's show was a major milestone. The audience, the laughs, and Johnny's seal of approval meant everything in the entertainment world. Reynolds knew this well, and he had a deep respect for Carson's work. Reynolds' first invitation to The Tonight Show was a big deal. He knew that Carson was not only a comedian, but a master at handling guests. But behind Carson's on-screen charm were certain rules and preferences that every guest had to follow. Carson's crew made sure to brief Reynolds on these unspoken guidelines. Don't touch Johnny too much, don't mess with his pens, and don't ruin his hair. Seemed simple enough. After the initial briefing, Reynolds was eager to make his mark. He had been on plenty of talk shows, but this one felt different. Carson's show was the ultimate stage, and Reynolds wanted to leave an impression. However, things didn't go quite as planned during their first interaction backstage. The chemistry was a bit off, and Reynolds sensed that Carson's cool, calm persona wasn't as easygoing as it seemed. He realized that behind the laughs, Carson could be a bit standoffish, especially with new guests, but that wasn't going to stop Reynolds. He respected Carson's work, but he was also determined to stand out. Carson's rules were there, but Reynolds, known for his rebellious streak, wasn't one to strictly follow them. Their first few moments together may not have been perfect, but Reynolds had an idea, one that would eventually lead to one of the most iconic moments in late-night television. What Reynolds did next would forever change his relationship with Carson. When Burt Reynolds and Johnny Carson were on screen together, magic happened. Their banter, full of humor and quick wit, made for unforgettable television. Audiences loved their exchanges because there was something genuine in the way they interacted. While many guests would play along with Carson's jokes and follow the standard interview flow, Reynolds brought a different energy. He wasn't afraid to go off script or push the boundaries, and Carson welcomed it. One of the reasons their on-screen chemistry worked so well was because Carson knew how to handle Reynolds' unpredictable humor. Carson, ever the professional, had a way of staying composed while still playing into the chaos Reynolds would bring. For instance, in one of their iconic interviews, Reynolds did the unthinkable. He snatched Carson's tie, cut it with a pair of scissors, and left Carson stunned. The audience roared with laughter, and Carson, without missing a beat, responded by cutting a piece of Reynolds' clothes in return. The back-and-forth antics were spontaneous and playful, making it a legendary late-night moment. It was moments like these that made Reynolds and Carson such a hit with viewers. Carson understood Reynolds' comedic style and allowed him to take the spotlight. Where some hosts might have been rattled by a guest going off script, Carson used it as an opportunity to create something even funnier. He gave Reynolds room to improvise, knowing it would lead to big laughs and memorable television. At the heart of their on-screen relationship was a sense of mutual respect. Carson appreciated Reynolds' willingness to go against the grain, and Reynolds admired Carson's ability to roll with whatever came his way. Their exchanges were filled with humor, but were also a display of sharp timing and quick thinking, something that kept audiences glued to their screens. What made their chemistry even more special was that it wasn't forced. While many interviews can feel rehearsed or predictable, every appearance by Reynolds on The Tonight Show felt fresh and exciting. Their interactions were unpredictable, and that's what kept viewers coming back for more. Whether it was witty banter, playful pranks, or just good storytelling, the combination of Carson's calm presence and Reynolds' larger-than-life personality made for television gold. But things weren't always what they seemed behind the cameras. While Johnny Carson was known for his easygoing, witty demeanor on screen, there was a different side of him behind the scenes. Carson had certain unspoken rules that every guest on The Tonight Show was expected to follow. These quirks weren't public knowledge at the time, but those who worked with him knew them well. One of Carson's most well-known rules was his dislike for being touched. He preferred a respectful distance, and was uncomfortable with guests who invaded his personal space. While it might not have been obvious to the audience, this was something his staff made clear to every guest before they appeared on the show. Carson's cool, polished persona on stage didn't leave much room for physical contact, and that was something he expected everyone to respect. In addition to personal space, Carson had a particular fondness for his on-set props, especially his desk items. His pens, for example, were off-limits. It sounds trivial, but Carson was protective of them. Messing with his desk or his hair was another no-go. Guests were warned not to disrupt the carefully crafted image he presented on the show. These details may seem minor, but for Carson, they were essential to maintaining control of the show and its atmosphere. These rules helped shape the experience for both guests and the audience. Guests who respected Carson's boundaries usually had a smooth experience, with the host giving them plenty of space to shine. However, if a guest broke these unspoken rules, the atmosphere could shift, often in ways that the audience couldn't detect. Carson wasn't one to lash out publicly, but there was a silent expectation that his quirks would be respected. It was one of these very rules that Reynolds dared to break, leading to an unforgettable moment. The infamous scissors incident between Burt Reynolds and Johnny Carson is one of the most unforgettable moments in late-night TV history. It wasn't just another interview. It became an event that fans still talk about. What started as a regular guest appearance turned into a chaotic, hilarious, and unplanned spectacle. It all began during one of Reynolds' visits to The Tonight Show. As they sat down for their interview, Reynolds decided to take things up a notch. Without any warning, he pulled out a pair of scissors and, in one swift motion, cut Carson's tie in half. The studio audience gasped, then erupted into laughter, unsure of how Carson would react. After all, everyone knew about Carson's quirks, and how particular he was about his appearance and his props. Carson, ever the professional, didn't show his shock right away. Instead, he did what he always did best, played along. He stared directly into the camera, giving one of his signature long, silent looks, a classic move he'd mastered to get laughs without saying a word. The audience roared, and Carson leaned into the joke, showing just how skilled he was at turning any situation into entertainment. But the moment didn't end there. Not to be outdone, Carson grabbed the scissors and, with a glint in his eye, cut a piece of Reynolds' clothing in return. The two men, both natural entertainers, turned what could have been an awkward moment into one of the funniest segments in late-night history. It was a perfect example of their unique on-screen chemistry. While the audience loved every second of it, the incident had a lasting impact. Carson was known for keeping his cool on camera, but behind the scenes, the tie-cutting prank wasn't something he took lightly. To some, it was just a joke. But to Carson, it was more personal. Reynolds had broken one of his cardinal rules, messing with his appearance, and though Carson rolled with it on air, there were rumblings afterward that he wasn't entirely pleased. But this wasn't just a funny prank. It had deeper implications for their relationship. While the infamous scissors incident between Burt Reynolds and Johnny Carson was a hit with the audience, the story didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. On air, Carson played the part of a good sport, laughing along and even participating in the playful cutting of clothes. But behind the scenes, the reality was a little different. Those close to Johnny Carson have since revealed that the incident wasn't as light-hearted for Carson as it appeared. While Carson could take a joke as well as anyone, this particular moment crossed one of his lines. As mentioned before, Carson had strict rules about his on-set behavior, particularly when it came to his appearance and personal items. When Reynolds cut his tie, it wasn't just a prop to Carson, it was part of his carefully curated image. According to crew members who were there that night, Carson wasn't happy after the show ended. His initial reaction in front of the audience was calculated, as Carson was a master of maintaining his public persona. But privately, there was tension. He didn't lose his temper, but there was a clear sense that the joke had gone too far. Carson, known for keeping his emotions in check, was visibly irritated, though he never publicly admitted it. Several people who worked on The Tonight Show later confirmed that while Carson respected Reynolds, he wasn't thrilled about the stunt. The prank had crossed a line that most guests wouldn't dare to. Carson's discomfort with physical humor and props being messed with was well known among those who worked with him. While he let it slide on camera, those close to him knew this wasn't a moment he would forget quickly. This incident highlighted the stark difference between Carson's on-screen charm and his private demeanor. On stage, Carson was the epitome of cool, delivering laughs, and handling any situation with grace. Off-camera, however, he was more reserved, careful, and particular about his environment. The scissors incident drew attention to that divide, showing that even Hollywood's most composed stars have their limits. However, the real shock came years later, when Reynolds finally opened up about the truth. As Burt Reynolds grew older, he became more reflective about his career and the relationships he had built in Hollywood. One of the most surprising revelations he made before his passing was about his friendship with Johnny Carson. In an emotional interview, Reynolds opened up about the highs and lows of their bond, giving fans a glimpse into a side of Carson that few ever saw. Reynolds admitted that the infamous scissors incident wasn't just a funny prank for him. While he laughed it off at the time, he later realized it might have crossed a line with Carson. In his later years, Reynolds looked back on that moment with a mix of pride and regret. He was proud of creating such an unforgettable moment on television, but he also acknowledged that it had a lasting effect on their relationship. He shared that Carson, though calm on the air, wasn't entirely comfortable with how things unfolded. Reynolds's confession highlighted a deeper truth about their friendship. It was far more complicated than anyone realized. On screen, they had a brilliant chemistry that captivated audiences, but behind the scenes, their relationship was filled with unspoken tension. Though the pranks and laughs were frequent, there was a subtle undercurrent of competitiveness and caution between the two. Reynolds respected Carson immensely, but he also saw him as someone who maintained a certain emotional distance from others, even friends. What made this revelation even more poignant was how Reynolds reflected on their bond later in life. He spoke fondly of Carson and their time together on The Tonight Show, acknowledging that, through the ups and downs, their friendship was something he cherished. Reynolds understood that Carson was a man of many layers, someone who valued professionalism above all, but who also had a soft spot for those who made him laugh. But there's still more to uncover about their complicated relationship. The dynamic between Burt Reynolds and Johnny Carson became more than just a series of memorable interviews. It became a symbol of the golden era of late-night television. Their interactions, filled with humor, pranks, and unpredictable moments, represented the unscripted magic that audiences craved. During a time when late-night TV was still shaping its identity, the Reynolds-Carson friendship stood out as an example of how guest-host relationships could entertain, surprise, and even challenge the boundaries of television. The Reynolds-Carson bond wasn't just about entertaining the masses. It also reflected the complexities of Hollywood friendships. Both men had carefully crafted public personas: Carson, the king of calm wit and charm, and Reynolds, the daring, rebellious actor who didn't mind shaking things up. But behind those public images were two men dealing with the pressures of fame, public scrutiny, and the need to protect their private lives. Their relationship highlighted the delicate balance Hollywood figures often maintain between their on-screen personas and their off-screen realities. In many ways, their friendship became an unspoken commentary on Hollywood relationships. It wasn't all laughter and good times. There were moments of tension, misunderstandings, and boundaries being pushed. But through it all, there remained a sense of mutual respect. Their dynamic showed that even in the cutthroat world of show business, where egos often clash, genuine moments of friendship and collaboration could still emerge. Both men contributed significantly to the legacy of late-night television. Johnny Carson redefined what it meant to be a late-night host, combining sharp wit with a relaxed style that allowed his guests to shine. Burt Reynolds, on the other hand, brought a sense of unpredictability to his appearances, often turning a standard interview into a comedic event. Together, they helped shape a generation's expectations of what late-night TV could be: unscripted, genuine, and filled with humor that felt spontaneous. Their interactions left a lasting impact, influencing how future talk show hosts and guests approach their appearances. Carson's calm presence and Reynolds' larger-than-life personality created a formula that many would try to replicate in the years to come. They became an iconic duo of late-night entertainment, representing a time when television wasn't overly polished or scripted, but instead relied on the natural chemistry between host and guest. Yet, this wasn't the only secret Reynolds revealed about Carson. As we reflect on the relationship between Burt Reynolds and Johnny Carson, it becomes clear that their connection was more than just a series of entertaining interviews. Reynolds' revelation about Carson in his later years adds depth to what we saw on television. A friendship that had its playful moments, but also a complexity that few understood. In the broader context of their lives, their relationship shows us how two icons of Hollywood navigated their fame, humor, and personal boundaries in the public eye. Their on-screen moments together became an integral part of TV history. Those spontaneous interactions, filled with pranks and banter, showed audiences the magic of unscripted television. While their friendship may have had its challenges, the moments they shared on The Tonight Show contributed to the legacy of late-night television in a way few others could. Their chemistry became a blueprint for future hosts and guests, showing that authenticity, even when it came with tension, made for unforgettable television. The long-lasting impact of their relationship goes beyond just entertainment value. It reminds us of the human side of celebrities, people who have personal preferences, boundaries, and friendships that aren't always as they appear in the spotlight. Carson and Reynolds had a bond that was, at times, playful, and at other times, strained. But in the end, it was a bond built on mutual respect, even when they didn't always see eye to eye. What we can learn from their relationship is the importance of balancing humor with understanding. Reynolds pushed boundaries, and Carson, despite his discomfort, found ways to turn those moments into laughter. Their friendship, though far from perfect, was a reminder that even in the high-pressure world of Hollywood, it's possible to maintain connections that are both professional and personal. Burt Reynolds' revelation about Johnny Carson gave us a glimpse into the often complicated world of Hollywood friendships. These two icons left behind a legacy filled with laughter, pranks, and unforgettable moments that will live on in television history. While we may never fully understand the depth of their bond, their story continues to captivate. Be sure to like, subscribe, and check out more of our videos for untold Hollywood stories.